Everyone said that the American Studies Association should end its boycott of Israel. View this entire framework as an ontological support of what Ari has said. The first contention is going to be, I forgot about that. The value criterion for this debate is going to be net benefits, and the plan text is just going to be do the resolution. All definitions are going to be contextual. The first contention is about ethics. Politics and academia should not mix. The entire reason we have academics is so that we can learn more about the world. If all we ever did was, based on everything we have off of common sense, like, oh, this doesn't make sense and this doesn't make sense, and academics wouldn't be needed. The reason we have academics is to explore new avenues. This is empirically proven. Whenever we run a K, whenever we run like a topicality show, it always goes back to education. Things don't make sense, but we shouldn't just say they don't make sense. We should understand why they don't make sense. Now, the reason this connects back to the topic is that academia can't condemn politics, or else they exclude other political views. We can't have a world where we condemn a Marxist simply because Marxists were like a Marxist once led the Soviet Union. Even if a political organization is ideologically opposite of what you want, you need to engage in discussion there, not condemnation. Israel isn't perfect, but there's clear bias when we condemn Israel. Well, we don't condemn Syria for murdering all those people. We don't condemn Libya for bombing its own people. We don't condemn Russia for its rampant homosexual rights abuses. Therefore, we view this as one, bigoted against Israel, and two, it shouldn't have any place in academics. The impact and link here. And academic freedom. If the American Studies Association allows Israelites and Israel professors and Israel students, etc., to learn under American Studies Association, to learn more about American culture, to learn more about everything, we have an ideological exchange, and we avoid the tautological thinking where we don't talk to Israel because Israel is Israel. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense academically. It doesn't make sense from a net beneficial perspective. Therefore, vote for the affirmative here because one, academic freedom is key to intellectual growth and the acceptance of others. Let's talk about intellectual growth first. If I never experience the ideas of Israel, if I never understand the exact things they're saying, if I never experience the different perspectives there, that means I never get intellectual growth, I never expand my own mindset of thinking. If all we ever do is learn what the American Studies Association says to learn only about America, and we don't learn anything about Israel, if we don't exchange ideas with Israel, even if the classes aren't about Israel, just being in a classroom with another Israel person, with another Israelite, will be able to enable us to, enable us to achieve intellectual growth. Intellectual growth is important because it achieves entrepreneurship, it achieves technology. If people are smarter about the rest of the world, they're going to be better able to advance philosophy, they're going to better be able to advance technology, impact all of this with the quality of life of not only American citizens, but the rest of the world. The second impact is the acceptance of the other. We solve dehumanization here because we're otherizing Israel. We're saying all the political viewpoints of the Israel elite don't make sense here. We should completely reject them. We're otherizing Israel, which justifies any and all atrocities we commit against them because we're suddenly saying just because you're different from us. If I have to save one American life but kill 10 Israelites, it's completely justified. Avoid this entire dehumanization scenario since dehumanization is the root cause of all violence. Evaluate that first in today's debate. Our second contention is going to be about hegemony. The entire reason the ASA was founded was to spread understanding of American history and to spread understanding of American culture. This is really important because right now the status quo, Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is very angry at Obama because Obama's completely rejected their own plans for Iranian nuclear development. The United States gave some leeway to Iran, but Israel, being an internal opponent against Iran, has stated that we should have completely shut down their entire nuclear program. This means that right now in the status quo, there's going to be increasing anti-American resentment within Israel. This is inherently bad for a couple of reasons. One, Israel is the key to Middle Eastern control. Israel has the large majority of our bases. Israel directly controls of the Fifth Fleet, which is currently located in the Gulf, in the Persian Gulf, which means Israel is key to actually achieving any real Middle Eastern peace. And we decrease resentment here by specifically enabling the Israelites to learn more about America. If we don't create this otherization between America and Israel, if we allow Israelites to learn more about American culture, to learn more about American history, they're going to be more epistemologically inclined to agree with America's points of views, and this is going to lead to an increase in perceptions and a decrease of anti-Western resentment within Israel. Israel's always been our eternal ally, but right now the geopolitical forecasts say that Israel will drift away from us. Don't let this happen. Vote for the affirmative because we allow an ideological exchange. The link here is again an ideological exchange. America is able to talk to Israelites. Israelites are able to talk to Americans and learn more about our culture. The impacts here are twofold. One, soft power. America gains more cultural hegemony if we do have our views enforced in other countries. We're saying that American hegemony is the most important impact in today's. I keep saying most important impact. I don't know why I keep saying that. American hegemony is a very important impact in today's debate because if other countries understand our points of view, American global leadership precludes any real global nuclear exchange. I'll explain that a little bit more later. So the first thing we're going to be talking about here is cultural hegemony. We're able to enforce better our own viewpoints, and therefore we decrease the conflict. Therefore, we decrease the amount of dehumanization that takes place between America and Israel because there's less anti-Western resentment. So let's talk about the global nuclear exchange idea. Within Israel right now, Israel is against Iran because they keep developing nuclear weapons. America is the only roadblock of Israel from actually attacking Iran. The entire reason the Middle East hasn't completely broken down is because of American intervention. Now, American intervention infiltrates in multiple ways. We see that before the United States went into the Middle East, they were largely dominated by the Muslim radical elite, and this led to the dehumanization of women. This led to the incidents in Syria, the incidents in Afghanistan, the Taliban taking over, and we see overall that America's ethics, while sometimes questionable, are unquestionably better than those of the Taliban and those of Muslim radical terrorists, because we're saying here that America is the hegemon of human rights. America is the front runner of Western ideology. We're saying Western ideology is the most important thing in today's debate because it enables us to achieve human rights for Israel and women. Yeah?
Why is the United States the best actor in this plan? Because the United States has never been able to condemn Israel for any of their human rights violations.
The United States is the best actor in the plan because the American Studies Association is an American organization. Therefore, you can't achieve you can't have an actor CP for this entire debate because no other country controls the, this isn't even an actor CP because this isn't the United States doing anything. It's just an organization within America bringing American views to other parts of the world. Israel is key to Middle Eastern control. Therefore, the United States is able to. Therefore, if American leadership increases in the Middle East, that means there's going to be less of a chance of war breaking out, and there's also going to be significantly less of a chance of Iran gaining nuclear weapons. If the United States completely loses hegemony because Israel no longer trusts the United States, the war will break out in the Middle East, and this will ultimately escalate to real nuclear conflicts because Iran does have nuclear weapons. Pakistan, which is somewhat close to the Middle East, has nuclear weapons. Israel has significant weapons of mass destruction. These are the weapons that we don't want getting out, and the only thing that can stop that is the United States. This is the largest impact in today's debate because war inevitably escalates. Since the United States has connections within the Middle East, since the EU has connections within the Middle East, Russia has connections within the Middle East, it's going to inevitably escalate to a global conflict. World War III, impact this nuke war and existential extinction. Yeah.
So if the United States government is a key actor in the situation, why should the American Studies Association be doing the job of the United States?
The United States isn't the key actor. We're seeing the American Studies Association being better able to reduce nuclear terrorism, better able to reduce misunderstandings. That's why we want to spread American views. The third contention is that the boycott simply doesn't work. The ASA only has members that study American history and culture, so while they do have significant employ among the people of Israel, the Israel government doesn't care if American studies professors go to their conferences. Therefore, the boycott doesn't do anything except lead to the two disadvantaged impact we talked about later. Therefore, lift the boycott so that the academic boycott can allow scholars to collaborate in the publication. The ASA has no real weight among the political elite, so the entire reason we have the boycott to condemn the Israel government hasn't worked. It happened last year. The Israel government hasn't changed any of their viewpoints at all because they don't care about the American Studies Association. The real impacts about the ASA, and the reason this can still interact with the hedge argument, is because we're talking about the mass majority of the people in Israel who care about the American culture, but the government doesn't care about the boycott. Therefore, I shall affirm vote in the affirmative. Thank you.
Paper. Okay, all right.
Oh, and vote for Aria. I forgot to say that.
Dude, Aria for life.
Okay. Is everyone ready? I'm just going to put a definition on and then go through responding to their points and then stating ours. Actually, I'm going to go over our own and then theirs. I'm sorry.
So definitions, off case, on case.
On case, yes. Okay, so everyone's ready? So starting my time now, the first thing I want to do is provide a definition, explain exactly what the boycott is. It's not necessarily a traditional boycott, it's an academic boycott. So it's the American Studies Association boycotting their academic institutions. What this means is things like divestment, less communication, not engaging, not trying to make sure that the Palestinians get to go to university. Essentially, it's an academic boycott of academic institutions. We all know that, but I just want to clarify that moving forward in case there was any confusion. So next I'm going to go straight into our own contentions. So the first thing I want to talk about is achieving progress in the area. So essentially we have a lot of problems right now, but that progress isn't coming, especially on an academic level, which is where I'm going to be focusing in this contention. Essentially, first, the United States government vetoes any UN resolution that tries to condemn Israel in any way. This is why the United States government isn't an appropriate actor here, so other institutions need to step up. The second thing is Palestinians are not able to get educations because Israeli professors and Israeli organizations are constantly shutting them down, shutting down Palestinian universities, building their own universities on what were Palestinian universities, and not allowing Palestinians to go into their own territories. This is the second harm that comes here. The third harm is that professors in Israeli universities don't have the voice to condemn what's going on at the universities because the universities are so insanely pro-Israel that they're not able to condemn what's going on. So the professors are actually dehumanized here, not able to express their voices. And the fourth, we just have to provide some warrants for that. For example, one, Hebrew University operates in illegally confiscated territory and refuses to acknowledge it. Tel Aviv University lives in literally the former building of an ethnically cleansed Palestinian area and refuses to acknowledge that as well. Yes.
Just a point of clarification, backtracking a little bit, is the American Studies Association a public institution or a private institution?
It's a private institution that looks for research and history. It's not directly linked to the U.S. government. The U.S. government acting isn't happening when it's status quo. The United States government fervently supports Israel in all of their endeavors and hasn't been able to criticize them because we have such a strong alliance that has led to stagnation and progress over the years. So we've got a couple of harms for you here, specifically to the Palestinians, but also hurting Israelis because there's absolutely no discourse. So when they talk on their side about how there's no discourse between the two, the reason that there is absolutely no discourse is because there aren't communication between the university students and university professors between the two cultures. So this discussion is key. So we have a couple of links here. First is that with this boycott, which came in place 2 months ago, just for reference, everyone's point of reference, there have been a lot of developments in the last month throughout March that have shown that this is a successful boycott. The first is that the media has been focusing on it. Channel 2 has been doing like half an hour long stories talking about the issue, so Americans are finally exposed to exactly what's going on in Israel. The second thing that's happening is professors are speaking out. We can look at many professors at area university who are finally saying that what they think is going on is wrong because they can see the harms to their institution. The third thing that we can see is happening is that the EU has followed suit. A lot of EU academic institutions have been doing the same thing, and they've achieved their Horizon 2020 plan, which essentially means Israelis and Palestinians will work together towards scientific progress in the area. Lastly, the Czech ambassador, doing under a similar academic program, went and changed their university, part of the university system so some Palestinian students could go to an Israeli university. Essentially, we are seeing solvency here with this plan, and if we can achieve solvency, I think we can win the round, because if we're able to save Palestinian lives and Israeli lives, because the conflict hurts both cultures, I think we should win. The last thing I'd like to talk about, I'll get to in a minute after this point, the last thing I want to talk about is what happened in South Africa with the apartheid. Essentially, all the leaders in South Africa and in the United Nations, Kofi Annan, Ban Ki-moon have also spoken out about this. They're saying this is a similar thing, and that what led to the change in South Africa was an academic boycott. In the 1960s, academic institutions in the United States and in Europe started to boycott South Africa, and then in 1984, the United States government finally acted. Essentially, academic institutions lead to government action. We can see this is perceptual and actual, and many leaders have compared what's happening to the Palestinians to what's happening, and said that because of South Africa, this will solve. Yes?
Has any real governmental action happened in Israel or the United States because of the boycott?
Please sit down. No, the U.S. government has not responded yet. Now, and because the United States government is so fervently done, but in South Africa, it took the United States government 20 years to accomplish. Essentially, academic institutions have to come first. So we see the impacts here are saving lives in the Palestinian and Israeli territories and leading to discourse between the two, essentially completely outweighing all of their impacts, because we're finally leading to that discourse, the ability of the two to talk in an academic way, the universities to kind of congregate and talk, people talk to each other, and leading to literally saving lives. So we've seen progress so far. The second thing I want to talk, so with that, I'm going to talk about the organization's legitimacy. Essentially, the organization can only maintain their legitimacy through this. Their treaty is that they're going to support and protect the rights of students, scholars, and people everywhere for academic freedom of expression, thought, and movement. Essentially, by doing this, they're obviously upholding their treaty. This is really important for them to continue to do work all around the world. If you want this organization to continue to exist, they have to support this. Especially because they only passed this 2 months ago, it would look crazy for them to backtrack now. And what you can see is because they voted for this on February 27th, to protect the Palestinian students, they need to stand up for this. What this leads to, what their plan leads to, is a lack of legitimacy. It looks like they're not committed to their cause because of such a fast turnaround. It looks like people won't respect their decisions because maybe they'll just turn around again. Essentially, any benefits that they talk about that come from this institution will be completely reversed. You see a lack of human rights, lack of understanding of American culture and history all around the world because of this, also turning many of their impacts. So with that, I'm going to go into their own contentions. I'm going to go on. Okay, so first looking at ethics, and then their point about democracy and culture. So first looking at their point about ethics. They say politics and academia are not linked. I think they're extraordinarily interesting. People learn about, people's ideas about politics come from what they learn in school. Essentially, your university education determines how well it builds things like critical thinking skills that are crucial in politics. So I think this is a ridiculous thing to say. And this is leading to discussion. We've already shown you the discourse that's happening between European leaders and Palestinian leaders and Israeli ones trying to combine. So we see that this academic changes are actually leading to political changes. They talk about inequality. This doesn't really have any sort of link to academics, so they need to explain why. They also talk about intellectual growth. There's absolutely no link. We aren't just learning from, it's not like Israeli students are coming here and learning in American universities because of the American Studies Association. This has nothing to do with some sort of study abroad program for Israeli students. And if anything, Israeli students talking to Palestinian students is more important than Israeli students talking to American students, because Israeli and Palestinian students have been more separated over the years. They have even more different ideologies because they've been taught for so long to commit the violent act should be committed against each other because of these territories. Essentially, you should outweigh this with the Palestinian discourse. The next thing says acceptance of other. We lead to acceptance of other because there's more communication between the two. We're communicating with a different culture. I'm not going to take, not at this time. That leads to lack of dehumanization, because if you learn all your life that Palestinians are living on your land, taking what's historically yours and ruining everything, and then you finally meet Palestinian students at university and realize they're just like you, that's what stops the dehumanization. That's what leads to understanding that saves lives, because the fundamental problems in Israel and Palestine are that the two people are fundamentally different people. They can theoretically get along in the future, but this will only happen when university students are able to congregate, because those are the future policymakers. Those are the future owners of business. Those are the future transportation workers who are going to be doing all this work in the future and could make the countries work better together in the future. Now, the second point is democracy and culture. And the first thing he talked about is that Netanyahu is really angry at Obama. Netanyahu is always really angry at Obama. This is completely not unique. Don't take this as any sort of point here. They talk about how the Israeli ally is key, but the problem with our allies' alliance with Israel is that we have fundamental problems because they commit so many human rights violations in Palestine. Essentially, our alliance can't be strong until we know that everything they're doing is sound. Until we agree with their morals and their political stance and their, with their military fleet and stuff, we can have a stronger alliance if we're able to solve the Israeli-Palestinian issue, because this fundamental rift in our relationship will be gone. We'll be able to more adequately solve the problems because we won't have to be mediating between the Israelis and Palestinians. We can just work with the Palestinians to solve real problems that are existing outside, not at this time. They talked a lot about hegemony and how U.S. intervention is good, but this is leading to U.S. intervention. So actually the link to U.S. intervention in the conflict and U.S. mediation comes from the academic, as you can see from the apartheid movement in South Africa, is that academic action leads to government action, so all of this actually kind of goes to our side. And then what they talk about is Iran nuclear weapons. They really need to solve for this better. We actually, the discussion in the Middle East, prompting discussion between the different cultures, can solve for this better. Maybe Israelis, once they've met things with the Palestinians, can also talk to the Iranians. Realize people aren't really so different. People just need to negotiate more, and then they'll be able to create peace. And the scholar collaboration thing works the same way. We lead to more collaboration between Israelis and Palestinians, so I urge a strong negative vote.
Judges ready? Clients ready? So to do a brief off-time roadmap, I'll be going over our case in order 1, 2, 3, then their case in order 1, 2. Cool? So beginning my time now. So first we decided to talk about how we should talk about RA is awesome and how basically we should have this ethical position and how politics and academics should not be mixed. Now they said that this actually should be mixed because basically through this academia we can have critical thinking skills. However, we're not talking about education in schools, we're talking about academic research in which they should not be intermingled here. Now the key difference here is that when they're doing this academic research, if they have a political slant associated with them, that means we're closing off new avenues for thought. Because that means that people will not be looking into the other positions where they can see, oh, maybe Israel's policy would be good in this way. But at the point where they are boycotting these Israeli professors and they're not allowing them to interact with these conventions, these research conventions based on American studies and so on, that means that these two will never ever talk. And that means these new intellectual positions will never be discovered. So therefore, let's move on to the next point where we decide to talk how they said that discourse occurs between the EU and Israel right now. However, in a point of information, they themselves conceded the fact that there are no discourse between the leaderships right now. There is no change in the politics of the situation between EU and Israel, United States and Israel, United States and Palestine, or any leaders. So therefore, we can see that there is no discourse change, and even if there was a discourse change, that has no political effect whatsoever. So therefore, that reputation doesn't matter. And actually, have more discourse if we were to remove the sanction, because at that point, the United States and Israeli, and EU, all these different academics could talk to each other and then come to political change, and that's what they really want. Then, let's look to the next point, where they decided to talk about,
Before February 2012, there was no discussion between these organizations, but now there has been discussion in the last month. How come we've been taking away with stop discussion?
There's always been discussion between United States and Israeli scholars on these issues, and there has been, discussions in the past on, United States, Palestine, and Israel. That's why there were, the six-party talks between, United States, Israel, Palestine, and, the other world powers. So therefore, we can see that, it actually would, happen, therefore they're actually, causing harm here. Then let's look to the fact that where they say they actually cause more acceptance of the other and causes more communication between the two. However, you guys never actually come with a counter plan, and we can see that there's no reason to believe that communication between the two, that is between Israel and Palestine, would increase as a result of our plan. As a result of keeping the boycott. We'd actually say the opposite happened because Israel's not going to view themselves as a victim, which means they're going to be more oppressive to the Palestinian people because they feel that by going against this, they're stopping the coercion of the American Studies Association, and they're going to be trying to be more independent of them. So therefore, we can see that actually leads to less more otherization and actually more harms to the Palestinian people. So therefore, turn that point against them. Now let's move on to hegemony. Now they said that Netanyahu's always angry with the United States. However, that's not always true. When the United States was giving more military aid to Israel and giving them more research, they were actually really happy with this. And Israel being really happy with this is important. Now we can see that this the current status quo, though, he is angry with the United States, and that is bad. And now we're going to tell you why. So now they said in response to the rest of the contention that we can solve the problems because we don't mediate. So how we can see, however, the United States will, they say the United States will never condemn Israel, which the United States will never take action against Israel, which means that,
So U.S. talks with Israel and Palestine just broke down, right? But the Egyptians were able to solve better a year ago. How can you say the United States government is an unpolarizing force that actually leads to discourse when it hasn't worked recently?
Because the United States is the only one that Israel will actually trust, and the only reason they will actually go to these peace talks if the United States is there. We can see that the talks between Egypt and Palestine and Israel also broke down, so we can see that they have no claim, it's a 90 point there. Then this had to say that basically this leads to the United States intervention in the issue because basically the academia will force the United States to intervene. They give you no warrant for this whatsoever. And also you have to look to the fact that once again, qualifying my previous point, that the United States will never go against Israel. So if you believe them there, sure, then that means that basically all they talk about will never actually happen, and the United States will never intervene in this issue whatsoever. And now let's come to the claim that basically Israel can just mend relations with Iran and Palestine and all this. However, the point when they have no CP and they give you no warrant to believe that Israel will actually mend fences with Iran or the Palestinians, there's no it's a complete absurd. There's no way that they'll ever mend fences right now, and especially when basically they are viewed as a victim. They view it as a victim. Now let's look to the fact they concede the fact that the boycott doesn't work. They concede the fact that the American Studies Association only has members that study American history and culture, and that the Israeli politicians do not care about it whatsoever. Now while the Israeli people do, the Israeli politics will never change the result of this. Therefore, we can see that the boycott, basically this academic boycott does forward impacts basically scholarship, but has no impacts on politics whatsoever, so therefore we can see that there's going to be no change here. Now we also talk about the fact that coercion is always going to fail in regards to Israeli politics, because Israel feels like the victim and as such is more likely to abuse the Palestinians. Look at the fact that recently they approved the construction of new settlements in the West Bank, so therefore we can see that as a result of this, Israeli policy is actually becoming more anti-Palestinian than it was previously, so we can see that this is actually a net negative against my opponent's case. Now let's look to the progress point. So they decided to basically say that Palestinians can't get educated in the status quo. However, like basically this is not unique. Removing the boycott doesn't like mean that like, Palestinians suddenly get like keeping the boycott in place doesn't mean that Palestinians get educated. Like there's still gonna be the same level of Palestinian education in like the world of the plan and the world of like the status quo. So therefore this point is not unique. Then they also said that basically professors are dehumanized because they can't speak out against the universities. However, those that don't speak out against the universities like basically do not want to condemn them. Not being dehumanized, they still have their own agency. They're still free to speak out against the universities if they want to. When we look at the fact that they brought their own evidence where some like professors were speaking out against these universities that were still very pro-Israeli like in nature. So we can see the fact that like they're free to speak out if they want to. They just have the belief that they don't want to speak out because they think they're correct. So therefore we can see there's a professor not being dehumanized. Then they basically said there's Israeli universities that are on Palestinian land and they won't invade it. They never actually tell you like how this progress will occur. That's like true for most of the case actually. Then they conceded the fact that basically that people in the United States are talking about it, but they give you no impacts like the United States politicians. The United States politicians are actually calling on the ASA to stop their boycott, so therefore we can see that there's going to be no impact there. Then let's take the fact that the professors are now condemning them. However, they don't actually tell you like why removing the boycott would actually stop this. They never tell you why like anything happens as a result of removing the boycott. They just say that things are happening. Now, and then they decided to say basically this would harm like scientific research. However, there's no scientific research involved. It's like ASA, they're only studying American studies. Then they decided to talk about how like academic boycott worked in South Africa. But that's because we took away their technological research. We pulled out our science professors, which is really what's important. That's what made them stop. Now, we also, because in here we're not taking away the science researchers from them, they don't care because why would they care if like American studies professors studying with doctrinal conventions? They don't, so it doesn't matter. Now let's move on to organizational legitimacy. They said that they can uphold their treaty, but at the point where they're only targeting Israel, and they're not targeting all these other discriminatory like leaderships or these autocratic leaders, at that point we can see that they're just being hypocritical. So therefore we can see this is showing their legitimacy more. Therefore we can see that they should be turning this entire point against them, because at the point where they are being hypocritical, that means they are not upholding their own treaty, and not only that, but they look weaker in the face of the other world because it seems like they're going for the easy targets, not going for the hard ones. Also, what we can see is that basically this would actually lead to a decrease in respect, like if you were to like just be hypocritical, because that means it's like, oh wait, they can't be like academic and like they have no academic integrity, they cannot like have like integrity in their own beliefs, and there's no like solid connection between them. So therefore we can see the only way to have organizational legitimacy is to like stop this like practice entirely. For those reasons, I strongly urge a vote in the affirmation. Thank you.
Yeah, go Arya, by the way. I'm not on water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your time now. Okay, everyone ready?
Yeah.
Opponents? Partner? Judges? Alright, I'll start my official time now. So I'm first just going to be going over the affirmative team's case, and then I'll be going over the negation team's case. So first of all, look at the affirmative team's case. So first of all, their entire first contention pretty much has to do with ethics. Now their entire response to our first refutation had to do with how you're actually like only doing academic research. Well again, that's necessarily non-unique politically. We're still like associated for research and all those other things. Furthermore, they never responded to our refutation about how academics, or essentially, they tried to respond to a refutation about academics leading to politics, saying that, there was no solvency, no reason this would happen. But it's actually exactly what happened in South Africa by having this academic boycott. What it led to were these different political discussions. In addition, we said the United States government, or they tried to claim that we conceded the fact. They said that we said that, the United States government was already doing this. Essentially, we said the United States government with the leaders wasn't necessarily working. What happens is these academic institutions come first, and then leaders start to convene and start to talk about all these different things that are going on later, so it's not any kind of concession there. In fact, we create more discussion, and we allow for fair discussion. So the entire thing is they say in their own first contention that we need discussion in academics, and that is exactly the point. What's happening right now in Israel with the Palestinians is that any time a Palestinian wants to say something that's against Israeli policy and an Israeli academic institution, they're immediately stepped down. Everything they say is censored, they're actually tracked, and the different things they want to say later on. These professors, such as the ones that spoke out, have actually been kicked out of most of these universities. What happens is that they limit thought, they limit discourse, because the Israelis aren't letting these contrary opinions come forward, and that's why you can actually create better discussion in the world of the negation, because we're allowing these boycotts to exist. When the boycotts exist, what you lead to is this change. You lead to the fact that they have to be fair. That's the entire mission statement of the ASA. They have to have fair discussion. There has to be freedom of expression in different academic institutions, and when one institution or multiple violate that, they have to act to change it. I'll take one of your points.
All right, can you delineate between the difference of education about politics and education that censors politics?
Okay, well, essentially, if you're censoring politics, I'm sorry, can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, so can you explain the difference between education about politics and education that censors politics?
Okay, well, if you're censoring politics, your education about politics decreases, because when you're censoring it, you're not able to have all that information moving forward. When you don't have all of that information going on, and when you want to censor political information, essentially what you do is you limit any kind of teaching about politics that's going on. Moving forward, they also want to say that, we don't prove discussion and we don't prove any of these things will be happening. Again, we don't necessarily need a plan. They tried to claim that we need a counter plan. Essentially, by keeping the boycott in place, you lead to all these things happening in the status quo. There's no reason we would ever need a counter plan for this. Essentially, the boycott is solving. It's already creating these discussions we've already told you about. It worked in South Africa. It's worked in several locations in the United States itself as well. So moving forward, they also never responded to my partner's reputation. They tried to talk about intellectual growth. She said that wouldn't happen. They never touched that, so therefore you can flow that on through. In addition, they never responded to our turn about, so essentially they want to say they would decrease dehumanization in their world. But essentially we're leading to fair treatment and acceptance because these Palestinians aren't going to be prejudiced against. Actually, in these Israeli institutions, Palestinians aren't even allowed to have their own cultural celebrations. They're shut down. So essentially we're leading to a world where there is less dehumanization in the negations world because you're not allowing these things to occur. You're allowing people's cultures to have weight in their own opinions, even if they're opposing policies, to have weight. I'll get to your point 5 times later. Essentially, their second contention has to do with hegemony. Essentially, we said Netanyahu was essentially always mad at the United States. They want to say that Israel needs happiness with the United States, and Israel only trusts us as their ally to make these different discussions. That's completely not true. They actually negotiated with Egypt last year, and it had a lot of success. Also, according to the Wall Street Journal today, Kerry has reportedly stated that he will pull out of talks between Israel and Palestine because of issues that are going on right now. Clearly, we're not the most trustful ally, as Kerry's already said that we're going to be pulling out, and they just negotiated with Israel last year. In fact, they never touched on their speech. They wanted to ignore it. Moving forward, as far as ideological exchange, again, we're saying this intervention is leading to the exchange in ideas because people have to go ahead and be able to say their own opinions. The Palestinians have to be able to say what they want to say. Essentially, that's a term. Essentially, they want to say that there were no fences being mended. Again, the boycott worked with the apartheid regime in South Africa. It's worked in several other situations. This is very solvent that we can actually turn this case, and so therefore, if you lead to actual acceptance of different ideas, that will work. Furthermore, I'd like to point out that they agree that Israeli citizens will care about the boycott. This means that the Israeli government will make changes because they have to appease their citizens for their elections. Since they conceded that point, they conceded that this will work. I'll again take your question if I have time. I'm running short. Essentially, in response to their third contention, they claim that we never refuted, but essentially we refuted this in our case. Our entire case was about how the boycott works and how it leads to these different discussions in these different political groups. So essentially, as you can see that we did refute this contention, maybe not directly, but you can just cross-apply all of my partner's arguments about why this works and why the boycott leads to all these different changes that can occur. But moving forward to the negation team's own case, going to the off case, the first contention had to do with achieving progress. Essentially, they want to say, there's the same Palestinian education. That's just not true. The Palestinians aren't able to voice their own opinions. If you're actually able to voice opinions, you can get a much more roundabout education that's better. Essentially, they want to say professors weren't kicked out. Again, several that were kicked out. Several were, and furthermore, they're also censored. Everything they want to say, they're followed around. These different things are occurring. Essentially, they want to say that also we're not necessarily, it only works in the apartheid because we took away research. Essentially, this is the same organization. We're still talking about the ASA. The ASA has the same mission statement and the same goals it wants to achieve in all of these different institutions moving forward. It wants to go to these places and change what's going on, make it so they're not being prejudiced against different people. If they accept these different views, I'll again get to your point 5 times. So essentially, you can see it is solving because of the fact it's the same agency. They're doing the exact same thing with this boycott that they did earlier. Moving forward, they also dropped a lot of our links here, moving forward about how the EU academic institutions are already doing this. In fact, the Asian Studies Association just voted last week to move forward into doing this. So essentially, you can see all these different people are moving together. That is achieving progress because of all of these different institutions acting together, which means that there's a perceptual and actual link. You have academic institutions doing these things first, actually leads to change. There's more discourse of people's actual opinions that aren't censored, and that's what leads to saving lives and more humanization because you're actually respecting other people, and that's what this association is meant to do. So with that, I'm going to move on to our second contention, which essentially just had to do with organizational legitimacy. So essentially, in the mission statement of the ASA, they say it's to support and or protect the rights of students, scholars, and people everywhere to freedoms of expression, thought, and movement. These are things that aren't happening right now in Israel with their academic institutions. So since those things aren't happening in Israel, it decreases their legitimacy. They're trying to say that they're only targeting Israel and that makes them hypocrites. The associations aren't only targeting Israel, they target all different countries that do these kinds of things. And if you're trying to claim they're hypocrites, well right now they're not able to do everything at once. And maybe Israel is the biggest issue on the table right now, which can be proven through all the other organizations that are currently getting involved in these same similar boycotts against Israel. That includes EU, that includes the Asian Studies Association. So essentially, as you can see, it decreases the legitimacy for the ASA to pull out because of the fact that they just did this. It makes them seem wishy-washy and like they're not going to be committed to decreasing these different violations. So essentially, it decreases their solidarity with other academic associations. It hurts the overall goals of the ASA to promote this free expression and free movement of different people. And so essentially, moving forward, when that happens, they're not able to accomplish any of their other goals in the future, and this decreased legitimacy hurts all their policies for fair treatment.
There's a team here running this weird K about happiness.
Oh.
Just what people are screaming about happiness.
Okay.
Sam Safari.
It
Yeah,
sounds
they
like
sang it
beautiful
for a
thing
song.
or something.
Yeah.
The only round he's won this tournament was the Happy K.
Like who?
Sam Safari.
Okay.
Yeah, he usually does that once though every round, so
Okay.
it should be good now.
Okay. Is everyone ready? I'm just going to go through voters. U.S. government, Israel, and Palestine, just generally. So, starting my time now. The first thing I want to talk about is analyzing this plan in terms of its effects on the United States government. On the affirmation side of the flow, they're basically talking about how it hurts our alliance, right? And they say the Israel and U.S. alliance is key, it's really important, and it hurts it. But they really dropped a lot of our responses. They first didn't actually provide a link as to why the ASA's actions affects the U.S. government's relationship with Israel. They never proved a link there. We asked them to, they didn't. So this really shouldn't apply. Why does this punish the government? The next thing is they dropped the idea that we can only have a strong alliance once we've resolved our ethical issues with Israel. They didn't really respond to that. We can't have a really strong relationship with the country when they're committing human rights violations that we want to condemn but can't. So essentially the only way to have an actually strong relationship with Israel is to solve this issue and then move forward towards progress. They also dropped the idea of Iran negotiations. I said Iran negotiations can only happen once Israel learns to be more open to negotiations, and that openness comes from more discourse between Israelis and Palestinians. Then they'll be able to negotiate more effectively with the Iranians and solve that crisis too. So essentially, the United States government will only act in a long time after our plan, which I'll go into later. But essentially, we end up winning this point because we strengthen the alliance more than we hurt it. And you can also extend my partner's argument. The United States government isn't doing a great job now. John Kerry just pulled out of talks. We haven't solved anything before. Only Egypt's been able to solve things in the last few years. So they really haven't explained to you why the United States government is key in solving this problem, and we've shown you why academic institutions are. So on our side, looking at the effects of the United States government, we've shown you how they lead to action. Their only response is that we have no link. We provided you actually a lot of links and empirical examples. I think we did a fairly effective job doing this. We talked about the media saying how the United States people are getting involved in this issue. We gave these examples of many professors who are doing this. The examples of universities that are finally allowing Palestinian students to enter. Israeli students who are criticizing the actions of Palestine finally instead of just going along with them. Changes in Europe, because academic institutions in Europe have done these boycotts, and if there are changes with the European ones, we can compare those to future ones with the United States. And the example of South Africa, they only really responded to our South Africa example, saying they pulled out professors. This is exactly what's happening with the boycott. Essentially, the ASA is not associating with these institutions, as my partner said. I don't think there are POIs in the last speeches. There are. Okay, I'll not at this time. So what we can really see is when they talk about South Africa and that you're pulling out professors, really we're taking away everything. So the idea of pulling out South Africa actually applies. I can take your question now.
Is the American Studies Association a scientific research institution, or
It
is
is
it
not.
or is it an institution about American history?
Yes, you've said that a variety of times. Yes, it's an institution about history. The thing is, it's not just the ASA that's doing this. It's a wide variety of other organizations as well. It's a United States movement, and the ASA is key to keeping this movement strong. Since it's the largest and oldest research institution in the United States, it's important to keep together the scientific institutions that are doing this as well. So without the ASA, all these other institutions might back out, and you lose even more, strengthening all of our impacts. But essentially, the United States government wasn't acting before, it's not impacting now. So essentially, we help the United States government because we lead to change eventually. We give you a lot of links, and it helps the United States government to mend its relationship with Israel because we can have a stronger alliance, and you can cross-apply all of the impacts they gave you as to why U.S.-Israel relationship is key. But I think there are issues that are even more important than the United States government in this round, and that's the issue of who helps Israel. Essentially, on the affirmation side, they think that you hurt intellectual growth in Israeli schools because Israeli students and American students won't be able to interact. They dropped my point about study abroad, this really doesn't affect anything, and they also dropped my point about how I said that I made a prioritization in my first speech that Israeli-Palestinian discourse is more important than American-Israeli discourse. They didn't really respond to this. You can accept that in the round this is true. It's more important for Israeli and Palestinian students to be talking because they have more fundamentally historical problems, and they're the ones who really are key to mending the relationship. The United States can do everything it wants, but if the Palestinians and Israelis are able to solve their own problems by themselves through student movements, that's more secure, it's a better link, and it has larger magnitude because the people are really involved in that. They didn't drop it. So essentially, we should win that. But on our side of the flow, we've talked to you about how the people help impact the government. They agreed with you that the people in Israel don't like this, and because Israel's a democracy and they have elections, what that means is that the people can influence what the government does, and the government will ultimately have to help the people of Israel to get these academic institutions back if they really are hurting the students. Essentially, so either way we solve for this, because if they are hurting the institutions, the Israelis will want to get rid of this, will help, and the other way we still win because that means it isn't hurting students. So essentially, this change will come because Israeli students are powerful within Israel. But the most important thing I think we need to talk about is who's helping the Palestinians. You'll notice that the affirmation team has not had any impacts on who's helping the Palestinians. People who've been brutally slaughtered for years and years and years aren't able to attend universities, have their land literally taken, and then put Israeli universities on that land. Huge ideological offense to them. Essentially, they've never proven you any impacts to the Palestinians, and that's why I think you should vote for the negation team. I think you should vote for the Palestinians in this round because they're the group that's being most brutally hurt. If they say that Israel Israel being the victim, but Israel clearly isn't the victim when you compare them to Palestine, where people aren't able to attend university, just talking in this academic way. So essentially, on our side, we've already shown you solvency because Palestinian students are already able to go to school. So when they try to question our solvency, we've shown you that things are already happening. Israeli universities are taking more Palestinian students because of this boycott, because they don't like the treatment from the West. Essentially, if Palestinian students are able to go to school, if people are able to get educated and advance their standing in life, if they can increase their quality of life, that's going to solve all of the problems. Because when Israel's allowed to just demonize the Palestinians, and they can't fight back for themselves because they aren't as educated, they aren't as wealthy, if they can be educated, that's the key to everything else. If the Palestinians and Israelis are involved in discourse and they're both educated, we're going to save so many thousands of lives here because the conflict won't be going on anymore if the Palestinians and Israelis are like each other better, are able to negotiate and have more resources. So in this round, I really want you to vote on long-term benefits here. They know a lot of their impacts are kind of short-term, right? They're talking about short-term harms, but it's like in the long term, we're the only ones helping the relationship between Israel and Palestine because the United States government isn't taking action and isn't an effective actor. It's time for academic institutions to step up, like they did in South Africa, and change it. More institutions and more institutions will get on this issue. It took the United States 20 years after the academic institutions started to fight against South Africa to do that too, and eventually we solved the problems in South Africa. So I think we should do the exact same thing for Palestine and Israel. So I urge a strong negative vote.
Alright, no roadmap, I'm just going to go straight down the voting issues. Alright, the first voting issue we have in today's debate is about the issue of solvency. In a POI, during the opponent's very first speech, we asked them directly, has there been any real political change affected by the boycott by the American Studies Association? And they give a very fervent no. And they don't give you a single example of political solvency being achieved besides the apartheid, which we very, very clearly explained doesn't apply to this situation. The apartheid educational boycott was a mass boycott by not only American Histories Associations, but also by science associations. It's a very different situation. Don't let them use the one past example about educational boycotts they know in order to win this round. The scenario is completely different. Their only response there is that the American Studies Association is somehow the leader of the American education system. This is patently false. The American Studies Association only has a maximum of 5,000 members. They don't hold a lot of real clout, not only in the educational academia, but specifically within the science academia. Science people don't care what liberal arts majors say. Therefore, vote for us there, alright? The reason you're going to be voting for us is because they treat but no political solvency, and all of their impacts are predicated off of the fact that Israel's nicer to Palestine, but Israel never becomes nicer to Palestine, and it's a non-unique scenario. In both worlds, Israel hates Palestine, therefore all the dehumanization impacts they bring up concerning Palestinians, don't evaluate them at all. It's a non-unique scenario. Now let's talk about the second voting issue, about what we achieved. And let's talk about hedge first. They really drastically uncover the hedge impact scenario we have in today's debate. All they say is that, oh, cross-apply it to us because we make tensions nicer, but they fundamentally misunderstand what the impact scenario is about. This isn't about Israeli dependence on the United States, it's about how the United States needs Israel in order to affect any real Middle Eastern change. They, one, concede that Israel is key to any Middle Eastern tensions being solved. Two, they concede that if Israel is no longer an ally of the United States, there's going to be automatic regional wars within the Middle East. Three, they concede regional wars inevitably escalate to a nuclear World War III, and I know this is a very tired cliche, and I know people hate it when policy debaters say this, but vote on the risk of offense, vote for us because we're the only ones here that sold for nuclear war. Let's explain how. In the very first speech, we talk about cultural hegemony. The cultural hegemony argument we bring up is very simply that Israel needs to understand the United States culture. And the entire reason we have the American Studies Association is to talk about American culture. So it's very counterproductive in order to get Israel to understand the human rights, like the ethics we advocate for, when we don't let them learn about the ethics we want to talk about that all. I'll take it.
Well, since Israeli institutions are quieting any opposing viewpoints, wouldn't they just quiet American culture if it opposes their own?
Yeah, but the problem is all of your arguments about how Israel Israel quiets other viewpoints is completely non-unique because we've asked you what real change happened after the boycott, and you said there was no change. Like, the boycott happening didn't mean that the Palestinians automatically became free, and furthermore, your access to those impacts are so minimal and so non-unique. We don't think you should win on that. We think we should win on the cultural hegemony argument. The United States needs to bring its own viewpoints and its own history, and it needs to let the Israeli people understand that. Because while we say there's no solvency for the politics, there's the 99% of people in Israel that are fervently against the United States because of what Netanyahu's been saying. We're saying the only key to solving any of that is to vote for AF. So vote for AF because we actually decrease anti-Western sentiment within Israel, and therefore we secure Israel as our ally. These are all things that go conceded the entire debate. My opponents only talking about the fact that they also sold for nuclear war, but they don't, because the single key is cultural hegemony. The words cultural hegemony never come out of their mouths. Vote for us there. If you don't want to evaluate nuclear war either, that's fine. Let's go on to the third voting issue about how like our otherized demilitarization scenario. So what's happening in Israel right now is that there is no ideological exchange between the United States history and Israel history. This is important because that means the United States students, the next generation of leaders of America, don't get to interact with Israelites under the American Studies Association, and Israelites don't get to interact with the United States, which means there's going to be ideological condemnation between the two. The very act of boycotting Israel simply because their political views are different represents a severe ideological condemnation of anybody that isn't the same as us. If you aren't the United States, then you deserve to be condemned, you deserve to be boycotted. That's the message the negative advocates, and that's another independent voting issue to go against the negative. What we're saying here is that there's a very delineated difference between one, education about politics, and two, education that censors politics, and that's the delineation my opponents refuse to recognize. We're saying that yes, education about politics is good, but the only way we can learn about politics isn't to only focus on the United States political science. We need to talk about how other countries approach international issues, because whether we like it or not, even though we're saying the United States is really good, the United States still has flaws, and we still need to learn from other countries. So we're not talking about Israel's condemnation of Palestine, we're talking about the understanding that needs to happen between the United States and Israel before any real political effects are achieved between the United States and Israel. And we're saying the only way to achieve that is to bring the academics back, to bring the academia back, to let the next generation of United States citizens understand what's happening in Israel. In summation, don't vote on Palestine because it's a non-unique scenario, because they advocate for the status quo. Every point of theirs is non-unique. They concede our attacks on political solvency. Don't let them achieve political change with a boycott. 2, vote on nuke war. They concede our entire nuke war scenario that comes out in the 1AC, and they don't really have any responses to that on how Israel is key to American leadership and is key to America precluding a global nuclear war. If you don't want to evaluate that, they concede that the status quo sucks. So vote for us on the risk of offense. Thank you.
Thanks for the round.
Thank you.
Thank you.